People sometimes ask me, is there a philosophy text that they should read? Is there a philosophy book or anything that everyone might read? My answer to that is yes. The Apology of Socrates. That's the one. If you graduate college, just sit down and read it before you graduate. Ideally, read it before you finish this class. Ideally, maybe read it before you even dive into this lecture. The Apology of Socrates is one of, well, in the ancient world, it was one of three classic, standard, introductory philosophy texts. There was another one by Cicero, and there was one by Aristotle, and they're lost. We don't have them. The only ancient introduction to philosophy that we have is the one that Plato wrote. It's the speech that his teacher Socrates gave at his trial, when the sophists wanted to know, hey man, what are you doing? You're messing up the economy. You're messing up our money-making scheme. We're doing nothing to anyone. We're not hurting anyone. We're just selling our sophistry, our technique for proving that human beings determine all things. And you're going around asking questions, making fools of us. So they brought him to trial. They had to put an end to Socrates. And during his trial, Socrates gave a full apologia, is the Greek word. We get apology from it. But he's not saying, I'm sorry. No. Socrates is giving an apologia. It's an account, an explanation of what he did. Today we get the word apologetics from that Greek word apologia. If you're an apologist, that doesn't mean you go around apologizing. If you're an apologist, you defend something, you give an account, you explain it, you give an explanation for what you've done. That's what Socrates did in 399 BC. Socrates takes to the stand, and he begins by saying, I do not know, ladies and gentlemen of Athens, how my accusers have affected your opinion of me. Interesting that Plato starts the dialogue with the words, I do not know. That's how Socrates began. And it's deliberate because what we call Socratic ignorance, right? Admitting what you don't know. That is the key to the Socratic way of life. Admitting your own ignorance. Only once you've admitted your ignorance can you start to become a true philosopher. And let me say that this is what Socrates is trying to do here, right? He's saying enough of the sophistry. That's going to be a key theme of his speech. Enough sophistry. We, mere mortals, have no chance at such wisdom as the sophists claim to have. What we, mere human beings, can have, Socrates says during the Apology, we can merely hope to be lovers of wisdom, philosophists, or philosophers. I do not know, ladies and gentlemen of Athens, how my accusers have affected you. They spoke so eloquently, so persuasively, so beautifully. I myself almost believed, said Socrates, what they were accusing me of. But I shall tell you only the truth. And I beg your indulgence, he says. I beg your indulgence if I must present my case using the ordinary language. The ordinary language. The ordinary language that you've heard me use in the markets, in the banks, in the streets, at the parties, in your bars. This is a lesson from Socrates. You want to be a good philosopher? Strive as much as you can to use your ordinary language, right? Don't go looking for fancy new jargon to dazzle your audiences. Speak plainly, Socrates said. If you want to be a lover of wisdom, just say what has to be said clearly. Say it directly. And that's a lesson we take to this very day. Socrates says then, I must disabuse you if I am to defend myself. I must disabuse you of not one accusation, but two, Socrates says. For it seems to me that many of you will remember a few decades ago, a famous playwright called Aristophanes wrote a play that many of you saw as children, and there was a character in that play, I admit, that was loosely based on me. He's referring to a play called The Clouds, by the way. There was a character loosely based on me called Socrates, who claimed to be able to walk on clouds and claimed to be able to have all kinds of special powers. But Aristophanes was just having a bit of fun. He's a friend of mine. I thought the play was funny. Let me assure you, ladies and gentlemen of Athens, however, that's not me. I don't claim to have special knowledge. I don't claim to be able to walk on clouds. That was just a joke. Ladies and gentlemen of Athens, says Socrates, let me allow me to introduce you to a new possibility. Philosophy. When you follow the way of philosophy that I am about to lay forth, says Socrates, philosophy has the miraculous ability to cure prejudice. We all have prejudice, just by virtue of living in a society. We see things in movies. We're exposed to ideas and ideas on billboards. We're exposed to messaging from very powerful advertising corporations that from our youth fill us with prejudicial ideas. Philosophy will free us from prejudices, says Socrates. As for the later accusation, says Socrates, they say I've been going around corrupting the youth. Well, says Socrates, let me tell you what I have in fact been doing. And I'm going to have to go back a bit. About a year or so ago, I had just retired from my life of being a stonemason, a stone cutter, when a friend of mine went to the oracle, the prophet down the street there. A friend of mine went to the oracle with what I thought was a joke. My friend asked the oracle, "Is anyone in Athens wiser than Socrates?" What a dumb question, I thought, says Socrates. I'm not that wise. I'm just an old stone cutter. But lo and behold, the oracle said to my friend, "No, Socrates is the wisest one in Athens." My friend came back and reported it to me. I didn't believe it, Socrates tells the jury. No way, no how am I the wisest one in Athens? I know what the god is up to. I know what the oracle is up to. I know the trick being played here, says Socrates. I have to disprove the oracle. It's like a riddle, like a cone. I have to show that what the oracle said was a challenge. I'm going to go and find all the people in Athens wiser than me. And so Socrates begins his journey around Athens. He goes first to the politicians themselves being very close allies of the sophists. And he asks the politicians questions like, "Hey, Thrasymachus, what is justice?" And just like we saw in the last lecture, he then engages in a process of a Socratic method, a technique of asking logical questions, each question leading to a statement which can serve as a premise in an argument that will serve to show that his interlocutors, the sophists, the politicians, didn't know what they were talking about. They were full of it. They were as ignorant as Socrates was. The difference, says Socrates, the difference between me and the politicians is nothing but this. I admit to knowing nothing. The politicians claim to be wise. I don't. We both know exactly the same, nothing. But I admit my ignorance. The politicians, if they're more foolish than I, it's only because they claim to be wise and I don't. Socrates describes how he went on to the next group, the poets, and then the bankers, the merchants, and he went all over Athens, doing the same thing. Hey, the poets, you claim to have the great insight to the nature of beauty. Why don't you tell me what beauty is, you poets? And to the bankers, hey, bankers, you claim to know the secrets of life. Tell me what life is. You can pick up any dialogue of Plato and read how Socrates does this. So Socrates makes his case. He makes his apologia. All I've done is gone around asking questions. I've taught nothing. The accusation that I despise holiness, that I've taught the youth to despise holiness, there's nothing to it, says Socrates. Find me one instance in which I said anything like that. Actually, says Socrates, perhaps I'll give you an example. I wish to call a witness. Socrates, you may call your witness. I wish to call the sophist Miletus, That's right. The man who's charging me in court may come to the stand. Miletus takes the stand. Socrates goes into action. Miletus, repeat the charge against me. Miletus says, Socrates, I accuse you of despising holiness, of not believing in the gods, and of inventing new gods. Okay, says Socrates, what are these new gods I've invented? Strange spirits, says Miletus. Spirits, says Socrates. What do you mean by spirit, Miletus? Everyone knows what a spirit is, Socrates. It's the children of the gods. I see, Miletus, I see. Now, let me get this straight. You're accusing me of believing in the children of gods, but not gods. Is that right? Miletus starts to sweat. What is the meaning of this, Socrates? Why are you trying to make a fool of me here on the stand? Well, says Socrates, because I think you've done nothing but lie. I don't think you care at all for the justice of the city. I don't think you care at all whether the youth are good or bad. I think all you care about, Miletus, you and your sophists, is making money. I don't think you've cared for one moment about truth. And if the lovers of wisdom, the lovers of truth like myself have gotten in your way, you will not hesitate to punish us. That's what I think, Miletus. And after a bit more of Q&A, back and forth, you can read all about it in the text yourself, Miletus was ashamed. He'd been caught in his lie. He had nothing on Socrates. Nevertheless, Socrates was disruptive. Socrates compared himself to a gadfly on a horse. As a gadfly annoys a horse, so I have been to the state, said Socrates. To the state of Athens. I have irked you in every little way, but I have done so, says Socrates, with an aim towards one thing. I must leave my society better than it was. Socrates says, I am a patriot. Patriotism doesn't have to be a bad word. We already have a bad word, jingoism. If somebody just says USA, 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 no matter what, that's jingoism. Socrates says, I'm no jingoist, I'm a patriot. A patriot is a person who realizes what their society has done for them and who therefore wishes, out of its sense of gratitude, to make their society better. This state, this wonderful city-state, says Socrates, they issued the marriage license to my parents, thus defending the family into which I was born. And they defended the borders from intruders, thus making sure that there was at least some food security for me to rely on. They've seen to it that I was able to access education. They've seen to it that if somebody tried to rob my stone-cutting shop, I could take them to court. I've benefited greatly from the city of Athens, says Socrates. Now, like a good patriot that I am, I seek to make it better. How shall I make it better? By teaching you to love wisdom, to teach you to love the truth, not to just listen to the politicians, not to just listen to the advertising executives, not to just listen to the financiers and the bankers. No, there's something greater here that we must do. We must engage, us, we who have inherited the great intellectual enterprise that began in Miletus in Turkey with Thales. We have inherited the project, the search for truth, the love for wisdom. We must not let these scoundrels stop us. We must continue like I have done. We must go forth asking questions. Philosophy henceforth, says Socrates, shall be a group sport. It is a group activity. When we talk to each other, when we talk about our ideas, when we're not afraid to debate and to have the conversations about the difficult things, out of that will come a greater society. Out of that will come such a profound love for truth, for wisdom, for justice, that then this city, which was defeated in a terrible war in my lifetime, which has seen terrible economic ruin, and which is now being run over by the sophists, we shall raise up ourselves into an empire that's not great in military strength, not great in economic and industrial strength, but great in intellectual strength, great in wisdom. That alone is a good state worth living in. What a great speech he gave. He probably needed some hot tea when he was done. Well, they went forth to deliberate. And by a very narrow margin, they go forth to deliberate, and they convict Socrates. They find him guilty. It was a narrow margin. Perhaps there was some underhanded dealings. In fact, we know that the very next day, the people of Athens regretted their verdict. But per tradition, they did let Socrates make another speech. Per tradition in ancient Athens, once you were found guilty, you were allowed to make a short speech proposing a sentence. Socrates, given that you've been found guilty of annoying our state, of believing in silly religious nonsense, of trying to corrupt the youth, turning them against our beloved politicians and marketing executives, well, Socrates, what have you to say for yourself? What is to be your punishment? And Socrates says, may I ask a question? Oh, God. What is it, Socrates? What do we do for our Olympic champions? Socrates, our Olympic champions, you know, they get free meals for life. We give them a nightly banquet down at the banquet hall. We do this. Why? Well, Olympic champions make us feel good. They make us feel good about Athens. That's why we give them free meals every night, Socrates. Well, says Socrates, it seems to me that a person who makes a city actually good, in contrast to just feeling good, ought to be rewarded at least as well as those who merely make the city feel good. So, I propose this for my punishment, ladies and gentlemen of Athens. Just give me free meals for life at the banquet hall. Just give me a nightly banquet for what I've done to make the city better, and we'll call it even. And everyone rolled their eyes at the great Socrates. Socrates, do you have any serious suggestions? And Socrates says, well, let me think here. You can't exile me. Why can't we exile you? Oh, I love Athens. You must understand. If you send me to another town down the road, do you know what I'm going to do when I get there? I'm going to walk right up to their politicians and say, hey, what is justice? And I'm going to walk right up to their poets and say, hey, what is beauty? And you know what? I don't think the town down the road's going to actually do much better than you did here in Athens. I mean, we're the Athenians. We're like the smartest guys around, right? If you guys got annoyed with my question, you know what they're going to do down the road? They're going to get really annoyed. And when they find out I'm from Athens, they're going to declare war on this city. So, no, do not exile me. I don't have much money. My boy Plato over here, he says he's able to get a little bit of money together for a fee. So, $30, good fee. Okay, you guys can go deliberate on it. So they go out to deliberate again. And they come back. And they say, Socrates, we've decided on your punishment. We're going to kill you and make you drink hemlock. And so Socrates now gets to make one last speech. Oh, dear, he says, hemlock, the stuff that kills the body. Boo-hoo. You cannot harm a good person, says Socrates. You might hurt my body, but there's more to me than my body. You cannot hurt me, says Socrates. You can kill me. Go ahead. But let me tell you what's going to happen next. First of all, we Greeks have a couple of theories about what happens when someone dies. I'll come back to those in a moment, but let's keep it in mind. After you kill me, all those youth I supposedly corrupted, oh, guess what? They've been watching me. They've learned how to do Socratic method. And there's going to be a lot of them. Way too many for you to kill all of them. As for me, some people say death is like a long sleep. And I gotta be honest, I do like sleep. But there's that other theory about death. Some people say I will go to the afterlife. And who will I find there? Our great heroes, Homer and Hesiod, Thales and Heraclitus, all of our great heroes in the afterlife. And what am I going to do with them? I'm going to go up and say, "Hey, Heraclitus, good to see you. What is justice? Hey, Thales, I'm here. Time to start asking questions. Tell me about beauty. And ladies and gentlemen of Athens." If that theory of the afterlife is correct, someday you will join me. And when you do, I'm going to have some questions for you. And next time, you won't be able to kill me. See ya.